Literatio! That's a good one. Literatio! Wow. Hello, I've been referring to myself as the Reformed Mythologist. It's a made-up job title, but heck, this is the internet. It basically means that I'm a Christian who thinks about stories and storytelling. It doesn't mark me out as special because there are quite a large number of people who fall into one of those categories, and some fit both. Here's a powerful diagram. Sadly, there are also people who are neither Christians nor interested in stories, in which case, fine. Thank you for watching this video. I'm glad you're here, but I'm not really sure why. Anyway, I've hosted a podcast called Popcorn Parenting for a couple of years now, looking at family, films and faith in Jesus, movies, mythology and the Messiah. It's focused mainly on animated features, which means there's loads of stuff on Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, Studio Ghibli, whatever you call it, and the rest. You can check it out and can find it in the lands where the podcasts are. So far though, I've not done anything on the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Mainly because I'm more interested in the books than the films. And in the art form wars, films overpower books like Dementors, sucking out happiness, joy, even feeling itself. Okay, I'm kidding. But books aren't films, and this is something we all need to remember. Books and films are not the same thing. But the really powerful stories don't only inspire books and films, but can also be monetized through immersive, three-dimensional, multi-sensory embodied experiences called theme parks. And that's when you know you've made it. Anyway, let's get back to the books. The Harry Potter books. The books specifically written about Harry Potter. How are they written? What do they mean? In this video, I want to show you that though the early evangelical backlash against them makes perfect sense, the mythos of Harry Potter is, on its own terms, deeply Christian. So here we go. Way back in history, back in 2005, before there were iPhones or YouTube, when turf was a type of grass, J.K. Rowling sat down with Stephen Fry, comedian, author and reader of the audiobooks which play on a constant loop in my house. Stephen has just asked her about her use of British mythology.
A lot of children will, of course, imagine that you've made them up completely.
Horrible liberties with folklore and mythology. But I'm quite unashamed about that because British folklore and British mythology is a totally bastard mythology. You know, we've been invaded by people, we've appropriated their gods, we've taken their mythical creatures and we've soldered them all together to make what I would say is one of the richest folklores in the world because it's so varied. So I feel no compunction about borrowing from that freely, but adding a few things of my own. But you're right, yes, children, they know that I didn't invent unicorns, but I've had to explain frequently that I didn't actually invent hippogriffs.
Wait, hippogriffs are real? Okay, probably not real in the sense that most people mean real, but J.K. Rowling didn't invent them. They're in a similar category to the elves and the fairies and the phoenix, fey creatures caught up in the curtain between heaven and earth. Is there time to get into that? Not right now, but suffice it to say that J.K. Rowling is not just claiming to borrow from British mythology, but to be practicing the art of mythopoeia. That's right, mythopoeia, which is a kind of Tolkien word which we also won't get into right now. So J.K. Rowling is borrowing freely from British mythology in the manner of a British mythologian. Like a mixologist makes cocktails from pre-existing drinks, J.K. Rowling is playing with mythic and literary content she didn't herself invent. Three-headed dog calmed through music. Anyone? So Harry Potter is mythologically driven. It's British, but is it Christian? Well, they do quote the Bible. In Book 7, The Deathly Hallows, Harry and Hermione find 2 Bible verses written on gravestones. J.K. Rowling, speaking in October 2007, said, "They're very British books." So on a very practical note, Harry was going to find biblical quotations on tombstones. But I think those 2 particular quotations he finds on the tombstones at Godric's Hollow, they almost epitomise the whole series. Those verses are 1 Corinthians 15:26, the last enemy to be destroyed is death, and the second is from Matthew 6:21, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The former is a quotation from the first letter of the Apostle Paul to the church in Corinth to encourage them with the profound existential significance of the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. The latter is taken from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Buried treasure, anyone? Buried? Incidentally, the last enemy to be destroyed is death part from 1 Corinthians 15 was read out in the funeral service of Elizabeth II in September 2022. So this is a real world thing. Now I know that 2 Bible verses and 1,000 pages of story are probably insufficient to convince anyone that Harry Potter is a deeply Christian book. So how else does this argument work? Well, in a variety of different ways, some easier to recognise than others. Youth pastor voice time. Death at King's Cross, anyone? Anyone? Bueller? But it's not just youth pastors trying to connect with teenagers. The wizarding world of Harry Potter is a substantial field of study. Lots of people have been reading these Harry Potter books, and one American scholar named Dr. Carrie Birmingham says,
I believe that readers of the Harry Potter series experience imaginatively the essence of the Christian story over and over in the presence of traditional Christian patterns and symbols, Christian allegories, and even direct references to Scripture. Millions of Harry Potter readers all over the world have received a baptism of the imagination, or an imaginative and compelling introduction to the essence of the gospel.
That phrase, baptism of the imagination, is from C.S. Lewis, used to describe his experience of reading the works of Scottish author George MacDonald. Anyway, to make her argument, Dr. Birmingham draws heavily from the deep well of alchemy. J.K. Rowling has been open about her interest in alchemy, and Nicholas Flamel was a real person and he was really hunting for the Philosopher's Stone. We're talking France towards the end of the 14th century. So in some ways, Carrie Birmingham's argument will stand or fall based on your views of the medieval practice of proto-science and how willingly you accept the theological explanations of the alchemists themselves. But she also does a mercurial job, you're welcome, of showing more tightly defined salvific events. Or rescues, it's fine to say rescues. She shows how Harry's time in the Chamber of Secrets points to the meta-narrative, or big story, it's fine to say big story, of the Christian view of history. The sacrificial death and resurrection and ascension and consummation revealed in the pages of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. Check out her video on the link below, but let's just say there's a serpent, a man, a woman, and then a character who makes bad things stop and saves the day. The phoenix is a Christian symbol. He might be named after a man who tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament, but Fawkes is pretty Christ-like. Carrie Birmingham also has a stellar theory of Sirius Black. Yes, you're welcome for that too, as a Christ type himself. A man condemned to die for a crime he didn't commit, misunderstood and hated by the world, and having close friends named Peter, James, and John. Okay, Remus John Lupus. Mind blown. So Birmingham believes Harry Potter to have baptized the imagination of multiple generations of readers and rereaders. But hasn't it also inoculated people to the practice of witchcraft, to a syncretist religion? Pick and mix. It's fine to say pick and mix. In which people prize the school of witchcraft and wizardry above the Church of Jesus Christ. Well, that's an argument in Tara Isabella Burton's 2020 book, Strange Rites: New Religions for a Godless World. From her website. In Strange Rites, religious scholar and commentator Tara Isabella Burton visits with the techno-utopians of Silicon Valley, Satanists and polyamorous communities, witches from Bushwick, wellness junkies and social justice activists, and devotees of Jordan Peterson, proving Americans are not abandoning religion but remixing it. In search of the deep and the real, they are finding meaning, purpose, ritual and communities in ever newer, ever stranger ways. Not abandoning religion, but remixing it, is a familiar idea for Christians believing that human beings are inescapably worshipping creatures. But the particular insight Burton brings is the profound role fiction has played in shaping the remix. Fiction produces fandoms. The rights to said fiction are purchased by colossal media corporations who then sell the merchandising to the fandoms, making them customers. Allied to this is the dark magic of social networking internet websites, such as the one we're on now, and thus spins the never-ending, never giving up, always and forever wheels known as franchise storytelling. And none was so oven-ready when those internet chat rooms kicked into action at the turn of the millennium than those Harry Potter books. It's proven the point of those Christians who were hesitant about engaging with Harry Potter in the first place.
I knew the kids shouldn't be reading the Harry Potter books. I knew it. I'm sorry.
You said it. You did.
I said I wouldn't be smug about this.
Weirdly though, the emphasis of the Tara Isabella Burton argument is not that most Harry Potter fans started forming covens of actual witches. Okay, some of them. But I once met a Wiccan who despised the Harry Potter films because they weren't anything to do with actual witchcraft. There's also an argument to say that because the church wasn't helping Harry Potter fans wrestle with the theological significance of what they found in the books, they took their deep, meaningful Harry Potter-shaped questions onto the internet and talked about it with other people instead. Carrie Birmingham believes these books were the biggest missed evangelistic opportunity of the last 50 years.
I believe that the popularity of the Harry Potter series is due in great part to its Christian content that meets humans' created needs for spiritual truth, obvious to its author, but hidden to many of its readers. I believe that the branding of the series as anti-Christian has ironically sealed the disguise, and the watchful dragons of Lewis's day are now slumbering away, content that this reading material is safely secular. J.K. Rowling has strolled right past those sleeping dragons to deliver the essence of the Christian gospel in their real potency to millions in a way that nothing with the label Christian could ever accomplish.
The Christian mythological substructure was so strong because the books themselves were so obviously rooted in the real world of late 20th century Britain, and because Rowling wasn't fundamentally making anything new, but following an alchemical and literary process. We'll talk about authorship shortly, but let's think about the text for a while. The text matters. The story matters. It's important what actually happened on the Hogwarts Express. It matters who Harry's parents are. The defense against the dark arts teacher matters. In a great story, it's all relevant. It needs to make sense. If you put a wand on a table in Chapter 1, someone needs to wave it by the end of Chapter 4. Red herrings are fine, but they all have a way of tying together in the end. Poetic justice. Artistic balance. And if the Harry Potter mythos doesn't hold together, the first book never gets published and the franchise never exists. Unthinkable. No! With each book, Rowling continued to rehearse and represent the deeply Christian rescue story. An unremarkable chosen one saves the world from evil through loving sacrifice. This is the reason for the immediate popularity and enduring impact of the books. In some ways, the books are like a Fibonacci sequence, in which the plot structure of each individual book is mirrored in the bigger story that takes 7 books to tell. You can argue that it's a chiasm too, a literary symmetry in which there's a match between books 1 and 7, 2 and 6, 3 and 5, and 4 is the center point. Carrie Birmingham argues it's why Harry is so sad and angry in the Goblet of Fire. Have we got time for the hero's journey? No, let's save that for the Star Wars episode. No! Anyway, let's get back to this remixed religion idea and the Hogwarts-inspired uptick in people calling themselves witches. Clearly, the enchanting power of story and storytelling can be used for ill as well as good. The question is, what should we be afraid of? Should Harry Potter be dismissed simply because it contains witchcraft? Friendly Dragons, Moral Nightmares. The Battle for Your Children's Imagination. It's a book written by a man named Michael O'Brien. He argues that dragons are being reinterpreted in modern literature. I agree. If you can train it, is it really a dragon? In fantasy tales, the ancient symbols are being reinterpreted everywhere. But C.S. Lewis believed the dangers could be much closer to home, much more suburban. He says in his Experiment in Criticism, children are not deceived by fairy tales. They are often and gravely deceived by school stories. But Jack, what if there was a fairy tale school story? What then? Lewis goes on to say, no novel will deceive the best type of reader. He never mistakes art either for life or for philosophy. He can enter, while he reads, into each author's point of view without either accepting or rejecting it, suspending when necessary his disbelief and, what is harder, his belief. But others lack this power. Perhaps the problem with the Remixed Religion was that it lacks this power. That art was mistaken for life and philosophy, that the online fandoms and merchandising everywhere prevented people from stepping out of the wizarding world back into the real one. Perhaps franchise storytelling and infinity scrolling internet pages locks people inside the wardrobe. Perhaps the books of the wizarding world of Harry Potter were lived in when they should have been read. J.K. Rowling has described some of the received wisdom about how to write a popular children's book in the UK in late 20th century Britain. She says, I found success by stumbling off alone in a direction most people thought was a dead end, breaking all the 1990s shibboleths about children's books in the process. Male protagonists are unfashionable. Boarding schools are an anathema. No kids' book should be longer than 45,000 words. But Bloomsbury took a punt on an unpublished single mother with many thousands of words about a male protagonist attending a boarding school. Lewis said of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings that it was an utterly new achievement, because the direct debt which every author must owe to the actual universe is deliberately reduced to the minimum. J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter books are the opposite. The direct debt to the actual universe is clear and obvious. She says so herself. Narnia is literally a different world, whereas in the Harry Potter books you go into a world within a world that you can see if you happen to belong. Narnia is a different world, but one occasionally accessible by people in this one. But Rowling's books present to us a fictional series set in the recognisable world and yet appealing to a mostly unseen realm. A realm suppressed by the Muggles whenever it breaks through, with Uncle Vernon as the secularist par excellence. Another, perhaps more surprising way the Harry Potter books reveal something deeply Christian is the remarkable fact that the creator has been cancelled by their own creation. The name of Joanne Kathleen Rowling was notably absent from the 2022 HBO television special Return to Hogwarts. The stars of the film series distanced themselves from the woman who wrote their characters into existence. I said we'd talk about the death of the author as a literary concept. It was developed over years as people argued about what qualifies as a genuine interpretation of a text. Is authorial intent all that matters? Or do the readers create the meaning themselves? Also, how do people deal with art created by artists they think are terrible people? For some very vocal Harry Potter fans, it's not that the author is dead, it's that they must be killed off so that we can enjoy their world in peace. It's a deeply Christian idea. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. You have killed the author of life, but God has raised him from the dead. We are witnesses of this. And then, in the middle of the parable of the tenants, but the tenants said to one another, This is the heir. "Come, let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours." So they took him and killed him and threw him out of the vineyard. The rejection or erasure of the author from their work is a deeply Christian idea. Now, J.K. Rowling hasn't taken on flesh inside the world she created to pay for the sins of her creatures. It's not the end of the story, obviously, but it's there. Let's think about readers. There are obviously circumstances in people's lives that give the books resonance and personal value when they read them, but isolated and projected reader responses cannot account for the book's initial widespread appeal, and therefore the existence of the franchise. That is because the books told a story. Irrespective of the emotional and mental states of the readers, their social status or political persuasions, there was a story. And in this situation, subplots and individual character arcs really don't matter much. Harry Potter is a story in which house elves are emancipated and the rules of Quidditch are explained, but that's not really the point. It's about the rise and fall and rise again of the boy with the lightning scar who lived in the cupboard under the stairs. J.K. Rowling again. Inspiration. The question you are most frequently asked as an author is, where do you get your ideas from? I find it very frustrating because, speaking personally, I haven't got the faintest idea where my ideas come from or how my imagination works. I'm just grateful that it does, because it gives me more entertainment than it gives anyone else. Rowling has famously shared the story of the moment of her first inspiration.
All I ever wanted to do, from the age at which you understand that books are written, they don't just spontaneously grow up out of the ground.
Which for you was about 6?
Yeah, 5 or 6, that's all I ever wanted to be.
Was a writer?
Yeah, I wrote compulsively, all through my late teens, into my 20s, but I'd never really found the right thing, you know? And then I was on a train, I was 25, and it came, and what came was, boy doesn't know he's a wizard, goes to wizarding school. Bang, bang, bang. And then that was it, and that was like touch paper, and I was on this delayed train going from Manchester to London, and my head was just flooding with what's at this wizard school. There are 4 houses, there are ghosts, there are house ghosts. What do they teach? What subjects do they learn? Who are the teachers? And I had no pen. And it came. Lewis, writing about John Bunyan and his famous allegory of the Christian life, Pilgrim's Progress, recognises those exact words. To ask how a great book came into existence is, I believe, often futile. But in this case, Bunyan has told us the answer. So far as such things can be told. He fell suddenly into an allegory. He set down more than 20 things, and this done, I 20 more had in my crown. The things began to multiply like sparks flying out of a fire. He let them have their head. Then come the words which describe better than any others I know the golden moments of unimpeded composition. For having now my method by the end, still, as I pulled, it came. It came. I doubt if we shall ever know more of the process called inspiration than those 2 monosyllables tell us. It came. And in the 21st century, when a great story comes, it becomes a franchise. It makes an eye-watering amount of money from a devoted fanbase, and rage clicks on the internet keep people engaged. But ultimately, the power is in the story. And the story is powerful because it's an echo of a deeper one. Please remember, media consumption is optional. You are under no obligation to read these books or watch these films. I'm Reformed mythologist Nate Morgan-Locke. I'm glad you were here.